manager's amendment, which can rewrite the whole bill. That's essentially what happened on the Patriot Act. They had been debating, it had been in committee, but it was rewritten the night before it came to the floor. So this is, I mean, I know why you're shocked, and I know why everybody should be shocked, but we shouldn't all be that surprised. Of course, I'm not, because I've seen it happen for so many years and have been fighting it. It's just sort of exasperating that we can't expose this to the public, and the American people would say no more of this. And if they knew exactly what's going on around here, I think a lot of incumbents would lose their seats.
Exasperating, and I was ranting and raving about it this morning. I know it happens all the time, and I don't want to get too deep into philosophy, but the concept of, you know, if you ran a business, if anybody ran a business and an employee of the business committed the business to some fantastic expenditure on the basis of a 1,000-page document, and the employee didn't read the document, and the employee wouldn't let the employer see the document, well, the employer should fire the employee. That is almost literally what happened in the House of Representatives yesterday. You guys work for us. You didn't have a chance to read it. The American public couldn't see it. I don't even know if the ink was dry by the time they took a vote, and yet the House passes it. Never mind that it does the unthinkable, which is to raise taxes in a recession, but the manner in which it happened is so antithetical to the government that Jefferson and Madison thought they were giving us. It's just mind-boggling that this can happen over and over again, and the same people who do it keep getting returned to Congress.
Right. Nobody ever gets fired, no matter how bad the problems get. Nobody seems to be responsible, nor do they get fired. Now, the one way I've been able to generally stay out of trouble on voting for these bills is I have a very strict rule. You know, if a bill comes to the floor and I haven't had adequate time to look at it, it looks terrible, I mean, it is just an automatic no. They cannot make me vote for something like that. Most of the time you can get a hint. Obviously, the bill, you know, even with a few minutes, you can figure out this is just bad news. But to really study it, no, it's generally not available to us.
Switching gears before I let you go, is there any buzz on Judge Sotomayor? I mean, did she adequately stick to the party line, sufficient to get the number of votes that she needs in the Senate to get confirmed? Should any of us be surprised that a liberal Democrat in the White House would produce a liberal Democrat on the Supreme Court?
No, I don't think anybody should be surprised, and it looks like she'll go through rather easily. The only thing that we can do, and I don't know whether there's much hope for this, is sometimes liberal appointments by Democrats turn out to be a little bit better than we expect, and sometimes conservative appointments by Republicans turn out to be a lot worse than we expected. So let's hope for the best, but I think she'll be a member of the court.
Congressman Ron Paul, thanks very much. Thanks for opening the show with us yet again. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Joining me now is G. Edward Griffin, the film producer, the political lecturer, and the author of Creature from Jekyll Island. Ed Griffin, welcome to Freedom Watch.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And, of course, I wish you were actually here in body rather than in spirit and in voice, but it's good of you to join us. What is, I think I know what it is, and many folks watching and listening and logging on do, but for the sake of those who don't, what is the Creature from Jekyll Island?
Well, of course, that's the title of my book, but the reason I use that title is because the Federal Reserve System was created on Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia back in 1910 at a highly secret meeting there where they denied that the meeting ever took place for a long time. They wouldn't tell anybody who was there, what they were doing. And when I discovered that the Federal Reserve was created under those conditions of secrecy and denial, it aroused my curiosity, and that's kind of what triggered me into the research project. But I'm talking about the Federal Reserve, and the reason they went off the radar screen, you might say, to create this thing was because the public was expecting the Federal Reserve to be some kind of a means of controlling the big bad bankers. And that's how the law was presented to the voters and to Congress, I might add. Right. But the truth is that the people who created the Federal Reserve System were the very big bad bankers they were trying to control. And that's the reason they had to hide everything and why they went to Jekyll Island to do that.
Those big bad bankers, of course, still have control today. It's a very, very unusual governmental entity. I have, in condemning its secrecy, said that the job of the CIA is to steal secrets and to keep secrets. Yet we know more about the CIA than we do about the Federal Reserve. If the president gets to appoint the Board of Governors, why isn't there a little bit more transparency? Has any president since 1913 said to these folks before he appoints them, I want to know, and the people that elected me want to know what the heck is going on over there?
No, they haven't. And the reason they haven't is because they're totally intimidated by the financial and political power that's held in these this conglomerate of banks. It's really become the other way around. We used to think that the Federal Reserve was to be controlled by Congress, and now we find with the passage of years that it's the other way around, that Congress is controlled by the Federal Reserve. And you can see that playing out in the halls of Congress in the last few months, where the Federal Reserve says we ought to do this, or we want to do that, or we're going to do this, and Congress just buckles right down and says, yes, sir, and here's my vote. So, it's a topsy-turvy world in which perceptions are not necessarily reality.
Were you surprised when the Vice Chair of the Federal Reserve last week more or less threatened the Congress and the American people that if H.R. 1207, Congressman Paul's bill in the House that has 250 co-sponsors to audit the Fed, and if S-806, Senator DeMint's bill in the Senate, which at the moment has only 2 co-sponsors, ever becomes law, that the Fed would more or less retaliate against the Congress and the American people by raising interest rates?
Well, no, I wasn't surprised at all, because I know the history of the Fed. See, the Federal Reserve System is generally called a central bank. And what a lot of people don't realize is that it's not the first one in this country. We've had 3 of them before that. Right. All 3 of the others were abolished eventually by Congress. But the last one was called the Second Bank of the United States. And when it was attacked by President Jackson and Congress, they deliberately, this is back in 1834, Nicholas Biddle, who was the head of the central bank, set about to cause as much havoc in the economy as possible and then blame it on Jackson's anti-bank policies. Right. You know, these guys are absolutely ruthless. They'll do anything to perpetuate their power.
I love the Andrew, without getting too historical, it's a great one-liner and I have to recount it. I love the President Andrew Jackson, Chief Justice John Marshall. I mean, this is the end of Chief Justice Marshall's term. He's been Chief Justice for nearly 35 years at this point. When he finds the Second Bank of the United States constitutional, this is over Jackson's objection, he basically said, John Marshall has made his opinion, let him go and enforce it. There's no way I'm going to put any dollars into that bank. And of course that bank eventually went out of business, and it would be another 80 years or so before the Fed would come into existence. What do you think we would find? What is it more likely than not we would discover if the Fed were to be audited sometime in the near future?
Oh, I love that question, because when I wrote my book, I discussed the issue of auditing the Fed, and although I do favor it, especially for the current reasons of finding out who is getting this money and all the secret deals that were made, when I wrote the book, I said, why? We don't need to audit the Fed. We need to abolish the Fed. And I predicted that if we ever got serious about an audit, it would be dragged on and on and on, and the American public would get the false impression that something was really being done to solve the problem, when in reality the investigating committee and the auditors would be handpicked and would be designed to give a whitewash to the Fed and all of those sorts of things. I said, let's get on with it. Let's abolish the Fed. But nevertheless, I still favor the audit program as it stands today, because I think, number one, we do need to know what secret deals were made, and that'll strengthen our conviction to abolish the Fed. And then, secondly, I think it's a means of helping the average American realize that there's something going on there that's not being made public, and so it's raising the awareness of the voters.
Is it more likely than not that the Fed is actually conducting its own foreign policy by shoring up foreign governments, perhaps even governments with which the U.S. does not have friendly relations, or with which the U.S. has no relations?
Well, I think that's definitely true. We must realize that these people are not just financiers. They're not just international financiers, but they have great political influence and political agendas as well. You find these same individuals and the organizations which they represent interlocked with the State Department and our foreign affairs